I wanted to talk about what you guys or what other people that you know of, like your clients or friends or whatever, what they expect from a relationship with a dog. The reason I bring this up, just to put this in context, is because there were 2 consults I had this week where the people involved, one of them was one of them was a golden retriever that's a really happy-go-lucky, cheerful, friendly, wonderful golden retriever, just exactly what you want a golden retriever to be. And he has his recall isn't very good. In fact, his recall is so bad sometimes that he turns around. He does the old "I don't think you can catch me" thing. He gets to 20 feet. They call him. He turns around, looks, and says, "I'll get back to you on that." And then he just goes, right? Which is kind of what they do. So that's that one. And then the other one is a little, about this big, little Chihuahua, a Border Collie Chihuahua. You know that Chihuahuas come in every breed, right? We know this. There are German Shepherd Chihuahuas and Border Collie Chihuahuas and Retriever Chihuahuas. We happen to have a Retriever Chihuahua. There are also, Greyhound Chihuahuas. There are all kinds of Chihuahuas. Now that you know this, you're going to look, right? Because they really are. Anyway, so these people have a little Border Collie Chihuahua. And, And adorable, just absolutely adorable. Really, really frightened. One of these dogs that actually was, her mother was semi-feral. She was brought into a rescue home and raised with a bunch of other dogs, but didn't get a lot of socialization. So she's got kind of a lot of feral things going for her and whatnot. She's afraid to go through the dog door, so that was one of the things we were talking about. She's got submissive peeing. She just, when you come in the door, she just doesn't even bother to squat, just starts to pee. But very, very sweet dog. And both of these people, who happened to be on the same day, which was yesterday, so this is what made me think of this, they don't want to give their dog treats. Both of these people. So by the time I got to the second client who said, "I don't want to give my dog treats for stuff like that," I said, "None of us do!" Probably not quite that strident. But yeah, I'm sorry you don't want to do treats for your dog. So how do you want your dog to behave? You want your dog to behave because they're afraid of you. We were talking about that earlier. Do you want your dog to be afraid of you, and that's why they do it? Because Alexa, you have a new name, Erica, was talking about, was it your ex-husband? Yes. Yeah, who doesn't care that his dog is afraid of him, just wants the dog to behave.
He likes it.
He likes it, yeah. There is that kind of thing that goes along with it. What do you want out of your dog? What do you think of as a relationship with your dog? And I think people are really confused about this. I think that there's a part of us that thinks since they're a pet and they're dependent on us, they should do what we want them to do because we want them to do it. Do you think that happens with a lot of people?
Yes.
That, I want you to do this, and I don't care if it goes along with your instincts. I don't care whatever. It's just you have to do this. And then there are people who, like the person I saw the day before, who was so indulgent that if her dog growls when it's on the bed, she gets off the bed. So you got this wildly differing kind of relationship stuff with dogs, and so I'm going through what people think their dogs should be. And the first one, the one I was just with regard to I don't want to give my dogs treats, they want their dog to be their slave.
A robot dog.
Well, robot dog to a certain extent, but they don't want it to be a robot. They want it to be a slave. They want adoration, but they do not want to do anything to actually make the dog happy. They just want the dog. It's like the people who think the healers are the best dog in the world, and they are the best dog in the world for people who have healers. But for people who have Border Collies or not, but they love the fact that the dog is right there on their heel all the time because it shows how important they are. Not the dog, the person. Right? Because obviously someone adores you. It may not be your wife, your kids, your husband, or whatever, but it's somebody adores you. So those people want kind of a slave, and they don't want to be shown kind of urging, respecting their dogs, or kind of cajoling their dogs into things or whatever. So that's one. And then there are the people who want their dogs to be companions, and who give their dogs too many decisions to make and all that. And so I'm just wondering, what is your relationship with your dog? What do you? In analyzing my relationships with my dogs, I think of them as being different species. I don't think of them as being people, but like my kids. So my job is to take care of their needs. I get to enjoy them playing because I really like watching dogs play. And so I think of them as being my responsibility. I don't think of them being my slave. Does anybody here know people other than your husband who thinks of dogs as being their slave?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Your husband is like that? Yeah. Yeah.
He's not really a dog person. He does dogs.
Well, there is this kind of thing that a lot of guys have, which is like, well, I just want the dog to behave. I don't care how you get there. I just want the dog to behave. Like what you were talking about, Marion, was somebody who has a dog that it's a
Barks and,
it barks, a Yorkie that barks, and so they're using some kind of electronic ear pinch thing, which sounds, I've never heard of it, and it sounds horrible. So there's that as well. What do you say to your husband?
I don't know. He's a very stubborn man, so it's hard to get through.
It's very difficult, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I just try to take care of them.
So what you do is you take care of everything and make sure there's no problem.
Kinda, pretty much so.
Yeah, that's what my mother did with my dad. Yeah, just the caretaker kind of thing. Anybody else have anybody they know, and have they tried to talk them into it? Yeah, no. Well, yeah.
Yeah, we had some friends who, he was probably a farmer and he was younger and treats his dogs kind of like tools.
Yeah.
There's just no association with the dog. They're just a tool we left out there.
Right, they're part of the farm. Yeah, I think that's not a bad way in a funny way, because then the dogs live their own life and are just expected to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it.
But when you got a social dog like a big golden retriever,
It's hard.
tough.
Yeah, it's really hard then. Yeah.
I met a strange person who didn't want to do the treats the way you're saying. They said, well, then the dog knows there's no consequence. What's the consequence? I said, what do you mean? What's
The consequence is that they get a treat.
Exactly.
Yeah, they think a consequence is only a bad thing.
Right.
That's what a consequence is just
What's
the punishment
if they don't
for
do
it if they don't do it. Well, I've always said, and people used to get so mad at me, especially at the beginning of the whole positive reinforcement thing. I'd go, okay, we've got two choices when we're training dogs. You can use fear or greed. And they'd go, well, why do you say greed? Can't you say something nicer like fear or food? No, because it's not always food. It also could be something else. And you could say fear or fun if you'd like to do that. But essentially, if your other choice is fear, do you want to go there? And enough people do, like the people who do sit means sit. They're horrible. They want to use an e-collar for everything, and they punish everything even before the dog does something. They punish it to make sure that they don't even do anything. Which is, I would say that it's kind of a soldier way of looking at things, but I don't even think it is. I think it's really just a punitive, I can, therefore I will. There was a wonderful trainer named Ted Turner, who was not the Ted Turner, it was a Ted Turner, who did, he was a dolphin, wild animal trainer, and in the beginning of the positive reinforcement kind of switch over for people, he did a lot of really great seminars, wonderful. He was instrumental in turning my head around completely. So he was super. He used to do things with a couple of other people. Leslie, I can't remember her name now. Anyway, but what he said is the reason people do things bad to their dog is because they can. And just because they can doesn't mean they should. And you would never do something to an elephant that we do to a dog. We would never, but people do, by the way. They really treat elephants very poorly. You're looking for a dog? But he was absolutely right. The reason you can't, the reason we punish dogs, the reason we hurt dogs, the reason we put e-collars on dogs, the reason we do things that are really horribly punitive and sometimes with absolutely nothing good comes of it, is because we can, is because they accept it, is because they then seek appeasement. They say, oh, I'm so sorry, and the person who's doing this kind of stuff goes, well, see, he still loves me, when really what they're doing is crawling towards them asking, please don't hurt me again, you know, but they don't read that properly. But that's what it is, you know. So this is my rant for the day, because I just been so irritated. I really did want to tell these people, you just, you know, you've got me here. I did it actually. I mean, I've talked both people into, yes, let's use treats. It took a while, and it took me going,
Sometimes you just have to let it go, Trey.
yeah, you do have to let it go. You do have to let it go. But I did one with the second woman, and I said, you know, I don't think anybody really wants to give treats all the time. We would really rather they do stuff because they want to. But, you know, if I'm your employer and I just say, well, I would like you to work without pay, what are you going to say? Well, thanks, but no. And of course, every volunteer in here knows that they work without pay. So then you're working for love, right? Then you're working for love. Yeah.
The funny thing is, I've had people say that, well, I don't want to use treats because then you have to use them forever. And I'm like, how long have you been using that prong collar?
Yeah.
Like, you'll use I've seen people who use the prong collar.
They don't like the whole idea of just putting stuff, you know, they don't like stuff about bribing their dogs. And by the way, there's a big difference between rewarding and bribing.
Absolutely.
And I think that many people, especially who've taken beginning level classes, don't learn the difference. So, because luring is bribery. You know, luring for a treat is to tell the dog, you're earning this by going this way, or you're earning this by doing this, or whatever. But they're watching the treat the whole time. It's that GPS thing I was talking about. So a reward comes afterwards, and the dog, in the best of all possible worlds, does not need to see the treat in order to get the reward. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, I have that little bitty bait bag that I use, and it's a nice one because I can put it on the, you know, I can hide it. So the dog doesn't, because if you've ever gone to a class and you've seen the dogs all recall to a treat bag, you know, they're all like, I'm honing in right there. I mean, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. So I think I'm going to be, my next newsletter is going to be on the relationship, what kind of relationship you want with the dog, and also problems with dogs and self-control. Okay, so we did that one, right? And here's my start here. So what we're on to is doing some kinds of actual exercises to help with reactive dogs. One of the things that most people want to do is they want to yank on the leash and tell the dog to stop it. And one of the things that when people say, what do I do when my dog is acting out, what I usually do is say, leave. Do your very best to get out of the situation. If that includes yelling at your dog because your arousal level is up, go ahead and yell at your dog. Because it's probably not going to do any good. In fact, your dog is not even hearing it. But, you know, you just do what you do to get out of the situation. So for those of you with reactive dogs, what do you do when you have a dog that starts to react or goes into full-blown reactivity?
Turn around.
Turn around. Go the other way.
Hide behind a car.
Cars are nice, aren't they? You can hide right behind them.
But you can walk around them and you have a lot of
Yeah, yeah. Of course, that was, yeah.
I would use our stroller too, because I'd have to push the baby too.
Yeah, so you use a
Oh,
stroller?
treats over here. Go. Yeah. Just think about
Yeah,
it.
I got two of my big bites were having to do with a car. A dog was going. He was in a difficult dog class, and the dog was barking at another dog underneath the car. You know, so he saw the legs of the other dog underneath the car, and he turned around and nailed me in both of my knees. It was like, whack, whack, and I'm like, ow! And I said, your dog bit me, and they were bad bites, too, in my knees. That dog really was irretrievable. We couldn't do anything with that dog. Great owners. They'd gotten the dog from they'd been driving through, I think, Arizona in a Indian reservation, and there was a pack of dogs, and these 2 dogs were amongst the pack, and they opened their vehicle door, and 2 dogs jumped in. And one was this dog who looked like a coy dog to me. He really looked like he was part coyote, and the other was a pit bull. The pit bull was no real problem, but the coy dog was, he was a real issue.
Is that the one that bit you?
That was the one that bit me, yes. So you can just see me going back to this, okay, talking about maybe this dog isn't right for this class. You know, I did not report the bites. I've been bitten many times and I've never reported a bite. It was all a long time ago, so I cannot report them now. All a very long time ago. So yeah, so what do you do in the middle of a reactive dog thing is you just get out of there. Now, you should have some really good moves that are ready to use, so we're going to talk about those. But they are not necessarily going to solve the problem. What they'll do is get you away from the problem. So Find It is, that one is my favorite, and I just say when I first started using it, because I think everybody uses it now, but as far as I know, I was like the second person to use it. And the first person was a guy back east, and he used it for something completely different, and I thought, I bet I could use this for aggressive dogs. So that one is wonderful because it uses the dog's natural inclination to hunt. And so you're actually doing the turning fear into fun because you're actually doing that. A lot of people don't want to use it, and there's several good reasons for that. One of them is that if you're in an urban area, Find It is probably not the best tool because there's a lot of stuff on the ground that you don't want your dog to find. You know, so teaching it in downtown San Francisco if you have a reactive dog is probably not going to be a really good thing to do. It's also not very good if dogs don't have very good vision. So one of the dogs I was working with this past week, I did toss various, in the house, I tossed various kinds of treats and got him interested in it, but he couldn't find anything worth beans. And so I think he had a visual problem. I actually worked with another dog that probably has a hearing issue this week. And it's really interesting because in those cases, neither of those people thought to think about whether or not their dog had some kind of a possible problem. You know, because vision, you know, they can't read the eye chart. You know, is that an E? You know, and they also can't. It's very hard to tell if a dog has hearing loss because most of the time they have hearing loss kind of in the middle ranges, or in the lower or upper, mostly in the middle. And so if you scream at them, they hear you, or if there's a sound of a can being opened, they can hear that. But they don't necessarily hear things at a lower timbre. I've just been diagnosed with what is it? Eye thing. People who get older get cataracts. Yeah. And I went to the doctor and I'm like, there's a change. I've got a change in my vision. It's not worse. It's not better. It's weird. And so he tested and he says, yeah, they're cataracts. And I was thinking of course I'm thinking about dogs. I'm thinking, what happens when a dog gets cataracts? What happens when they start to have vision loss? And, you know, for me, if I look at something that's shiny, it interferes completely with anything else that I'm seeing. So, you know, what happens if a dog does have this kind of vision problem or whatever? And so it should come up whenever you're working on a dog's behavior problem. You know, what kind of physical problems might this dog be having? So anyway, so Find It's really good for that. Now, a lot of times people think that Find It's really easy to teach, and it is. But essentially, you have to remember that the dog has to see it. So if you have an English bulldog and you toss a treat over their head, what do you think they're going to see? Nothing, because they have this big forehead. They can't get their head's all the way up like that. We can't see something over our head either. And we certainly can't see where it lands. So the biggest thing about Find It when you're teaching your client is that the treat needs to be low at the dog's head level, nose level, and the first few times you have to actually make it totally easy. It should be like, find it, ta-da. It's just right over there. And after a while, they'll get the idea of Find It. So the things that people do wrong, the first thing they do is they toss the treats over the dog's head. That's one thing. The second thing is that they go, find it. Now what's wrong with that?
Sounds
Say
the cue first.
Yeah, they're not giving the cue. They're doing the behavior and then they're giving the cue afterwards. And from the dog that has no salience whatsoever, so the dog is not going to pay any attention. And probably 80% of people do that, and the reason is because our hands are faster than our mouths. And you'll watch this all the time with things like sitting down and all that. It's kind of like sit, or you expect the dog to do something before your voice catches up with it. So it's hard to actually to hide. We missed you too. He says, anybody been eating here? I don't know. I really want the food. So that's a mistake that people make, is they give the cue, or they give the cue that they find it, and that's too far away, right? That's too long, so you can't do that either. So you need to say find it, and then you need to make it really easy for the dog to actually go get the thing. The other thing they do that is very common is that people think the dogs learn things way before they learn things. So just because the dog has done a find it like 5-6 times in a row doesn't mean they understand that the cue means the word, it means the action. They probably don't, as a matter of fact, because they're just going, oh good, things are falling, and this is my job to pick up the things that are falling. But once they get it, so if I say find it to Aspen, goodness, she didn't wake up. If I say the word find it and Aspen's around find it, she'll look all over. So now at this point, if I say find it, I can point on the floor and there's nothing happening. There's nothing over there, and she's going to be looking, right? I may not even have a treat. She just thinks that there's going to be a treat over there. So now the things you can do with this, I know this is people are going, okay, I already know this exercise, but the things you can do with this exercise are really cool. So if you have a dog that tends to charge at other dogs, anybody have a dog that tends to charge at other dogs? Yeah. It's a really common behavior problem, right?
It's really common.
And you don't want
People too.
Yeah.
Yeah, or charge at people. Either one, yeah.
No, it's him charging at their dogs.
Oh.
People aren't real people.
No, they don't like it either. Because who wants a charging bull, But yeah, so you can teach your dog to do a find it behind. So we did this with Boo, our Aussie, he was very friendly, but he would just go charging at other dogs like, I'm here, which is not exactly good for dogs that are a little bit nervous. And so we taught him, when we said find it, we just flick it back. So you couldn't even see the thing going. And it would flick back like 20 feet if you're really good. And he would go zooming back like that to get it. I would keep on walking, and by the time I got up to the people, he'd have slowed down. So in the beginning, we had to do maybe 2 or 3 of them. So we're walking along a trail, and it's find it, find it, find it, because he wasn't aggressive. He wasn't reactive. He was a butt. He just could be really obnoxious. So he got used to this whole thing, and then he ended up being behind us when we were actually meeting somebody. So that's one of the great uses of find it that people don't know about. Some of the other ones are just things that would make sense, is to, like what I do. There was this morning a happy-go-lucky young lab coming at all 3 of our dogs when I was walking the dogs, and I take them all off to the side, and I do find it's all, and I'll do like 3 or 4 find it's, and they're all just busy doing that, and they're like, okay, you're going. And so what happens is not only do they not pay attention to the Labrador Retriever, the lab doesn't pay attention to them, because their heads are down, they're not looking at him, they're not engaging with him, and so he can just keep on walking. So one of the problems with reactive dogs, of course, is the fact that eye contact causes the problem. So if you are actually eliminating the eye contact by doing something like a find it, or a touch, or a few other things as well, but then eliminating the eye contact eliminates probably half the problem. Maybe even more than half the problem, depending on the dog you have. Because some dogs, they scan, and it's like they have, they're just ready to lock eyes with another dog. And that was Luke when he was young. He just wanted to lock eyes. And you're eliminating that completely.
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps with predatory dogs too. Like my dog.
Oh my
is
gosh, yes.
constantly
Scanning.
the whole time. Like, what can I hunt? What can I hunt?
Right.
And so if we're
You give them something.
get lots.
Throw away a head.
Uh-huh.
So that's one of the reasons why I thought that Noseworks would be good for dogs in
We're signed up.
the
Ready to start January.
for Noseworks, yeah.
Give it a
But
try.
I mean, it's great for reactive dog classes. It's absolutely stupendous for live. So I'll talk about that when we talk about the classes themselves. Yeah.
I have a question for what you say to the person who, I'm doing that over on the trail side, and then they stop and their dog is staring at us, and like I can never get people to just keep moving by. You know what I mean?
Just look grumpy.
I do, and I'll like motion like, we're just trading here, keep moving. It's amazing how many times like I can almost have Mick under control, and then the person will stop with their dog, and the dog.
You know,
stares
you
at
see
them.
that at the shelter too, or at least you used to. Maybe you don't anymore. But people, volunteers, be walking by, and there'd be a dog behind the fence barking like crazy, and the volunteers like, "What's happening here?"
Yeah.
You're like, "Go on." Yeah.
I have to say that the muzzle, because I had to train Barley to wear muzzle for safety. It helps people keep walking. Because seriously, I mean, people see it and they're like ahead of me on the trail. They leash their dog. I mean, I don't go anywhere except for the pond, sanitary, Las Colinas, but everywhere else, people like give us space. They get their dog. They definitely keep walking. They move to the other side of the trail. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
muzzles are wonderful for that. Yeah, they're
so it,
actually.
it signals the owner like, oh God, I don't want to get in.
Oh, which is really funny because it's dogs without muzzles that are dangerous.
That's
Not dogs that with muzzles.
It's awesome because she doesn't like, and her tail's wagging a lot of the time, and,
Yeah.
but it's great. So
Yeah, I don't know what you say to people. A lot of times, I'm trying to think of what I might. Anybody have a piece of advice other than having her put a muzzle on the dog? Yeah.
I just always say my dog's not friendly, even though he is, because I'm not out there to interact with him.
I say my dog's.
I want to be with my dog.
it's doing.
How about saying I'm antisocial? Yeah.
What do you do? So after class last week, we went to take our Christmas picture, and we went to a park. There was nobody there, and so I had mochi in my hand, and people came by and they were stopped, and I said, "I'm sorry, you know what? My dog gets nervous." Because I try not to say I have a reactive dog.
Uh-huh.
So she gets nervous. Oh no, that's okay. We're training our dog.
I know.
And what I heard to say was, I don't give it. If you're training your dog, is it okay for you to train your
This
dog and make my dog? And I just
This
said,
is why this group is a support group, you see.
But they were with a trainer. I could tell they were with a trainer, and they stayed there.
I think you end up having to do something like saying, "Go away."
Well, I almost went up to them and I just said, "We better go over there because I'm about to go over to them." But then they just moved like 20 feet, and of course Mochi's like, and I'm like, "Here, come on, let's go." And we just moved. We just moved like 50 feet away. But I thought, if you can't say that to a trainer,
You cannot tell
what do
other
you
people
do?
what to do. It doesn't work. You have to do something
Someone
yourself.
has an idea.
So, you know, I mean, you know, I've gotten today with the Labrador Retriever, you know, he goes, "Oh, he's friendly." And I said, "Well, you know, some of mine aren't." Yeah. Even though they are, as you say, they are, but I don't want to be standing around talking to somebody that I don't know. Yeah.
And you do give them a choice. If something goes wrong, it's on them.
Yeah.
You already warned them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but I don't want my dogs to have to suffer from somebody else's, yeah. Yeah, Deb.
You know, another thing, sometimes people see a dog and they assume by their breed that
Yes.
they would act a particular way. I had a reactive golden retriever. And people, "Oh, he's a golden retriever, oh, my, he's so
Can't-
friendly." And it's like, stop, no, wait, no.
Yeah. I just think I have a really, really powerful resting bitch face.
Yeah, maybe that's what we need.
We need a class on that.
Yeah.
Bitch in training.
Yeah. Yeah.
one other thing that seems to work sometimes if you have people that are halfway sensible is if your dog is on the left like you should be and you all of a sudden switch them to the right, they catch that you made some
You must see really good people. Most people, in my experience, their dogs are all over the place, so they don't think that dogs should be on the left or anywhere. You know why you put your dog on the left, right? Because you can carry your gun on the right.
Maybe that's what we.
That's why they're on the left, is so you carry your gun on the right. There is no other reason.
You draw your sword from the left, it's what you draw
No,
with.
yeah, but it's not
It's
the
what you
sword. It's
draw
not the
with.
sword.
No, it's what you draw with.
Yeah, but it actually comes from the military.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
what you draw with.
Yeah,
It's
so you-
we're all right-handed, so it's either.
No, we're not. Some of us are not right-handed. Some of us are left-handed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's-
and I still have the dogs on the left. But yeah,
Have you ever had people completely flip out on you if your dog inappropriately greeted them on the trails?
if your dog inappropriately greets their dog,
No, people without dogs.
yeah, sure, they get upset.
So,
So what do you do then? You apologize like crazy. Your dog was the dog at fault.
There was a guy in our old neighborhood who started walking around carrying a golf club because he was older and somebody's dog knocked him over. So he's like, screw this, I'm carrying a golf club. And when dogs came by, he would just start waving it around. And I can't say that I blame him because
Well, the other thing is the Trish King Defend umbrella. You've all heard about that, right? So, and it was something when I did a presentation on it years ago, but I was talking about, trying to protect yourself and whatnot, and I've often suggested this particularly for elderly people who have small dogs, but we are afraid of, that means organisms are afraid of large objects coming closer. So, so if you open an umbrella in a dog's face, to the dog they don't know it's an umbrella. To them it looks like it's a large object coming closer. So if you are somebody who is walking a small dog who are afraid and you open this umbrella, they back off. It almost always works. And of course when I was doing the presentation, I had my daughter draw big eyes on an umbrella with a bloody mouth and blood dripping down, so it goes like this, so it really looks nasty. But essentially, an umbrella, it can't be the little bitty Hello Kitty umbrella. It has to be kind of a fairly large umbrella, and it really does work. So it's like the golf course thing, and it actually can, not golf course, the golf club. But it actually can work really well to protect you against. So if you do have small dogs, sometimes it's a really good thing to carry. Yeah, to your point, it is when they start yelling at you, when your dog is inappropriately run at them and all that, it's hard. If you say the dog is friendly, they don't care, right? It's just the same kind of thing as if they have a friendly dog that runs up to your dog who's not friendly.
no, I mean, I leashed Teddy as quickly as I could, but
Right.
the pure hysteria, I mean, I just couldn't believe it, stomping and yelling and screaming, I'm gonna call the police, and the guy had a metal water bottle in his hand and he was ready to strike it.
They must have had they probably had a horrible experience with another dog.
Yeah, but I mean, it was, clearly inappropriately, he greeted
Right.
people. I did what they asked me to do, and they still grow up, and, just inappropriately.
Yeah,
yelling
that
at
is
people.
hysterical. All you can do is get out. Yeah, they just get out of the situation because probably it's based on a prior experience where something awful happened. So they literally are in the same state that a reactive dog is. They're hysterical. They cannot think, and when we can't think, we yell and scream. Dogs kind of do the same thing, but it really is. It's a very difficult thing to have. I had actually another one of my anecdotes. I had two Rottweilers and a Belgian. There was this one bridge they used to run across and go lickety split. They had such a good time. So I always let them do this. This was in open space. And they'd go, can you imagine 220-pound dogs followed by a 50-pound dog all racing across the bridge straight at you? That's what happened. There were people coming the other direction that I didn't see, and of course they thought the dogs were going to attack them. Now, one of the things about owning great big dogs like that is that you have an obligation. When you have small dogs, you should train your dogs, but when you have big dogs, you must train your dogs. So these dogs were beautifully trained, and I went, down! And they went, back! All three of them. I'm like, yes. It worked. And the people just started screaming. They were screaming, and they said, I want your license. This is awful. You're terrible. And the dogs are all lying there now, like nothing has ever happened. So they're all fine. But the people had to get it out. And finally, the guy goes, I want your license. And I said, it's on the dog's collar. sometimes, and then they left. So, you know, but I understand that, you know, it's kind of, you get something happening, you kind of have to get it out and get it out. So that was kind of mean on me to do that, but it was, because I certainly understood, and I really apologized, you know. It looked like they were going to get attacked by dogs, and they weren't. So anyway, which has all gotten us very far away from Find It. So anyway, the other thing about Find It is the dog is actually doing something that's really real, and that's a great thing, because a lot of the times when you're working with reactive dogs, you're asking the dogs to do something that is not, most people, not us, but most people when they have a reactive dog are trying to get the dog to not do something, right? It's not to do something, it's to stop barking, it's to stop lunging, to stop being hysterical in their own way. And so what you do when you're teaching a Find It or anything else is you're saying, rather than not do that, let's have you do that. And of course that's really good with any dog, regardless of the issue that they have, is to get them to do something rather than to not do something else. Because it's just too hard for them to get the concept of that. It's probably pretty hard for us to get the concept of that as well. So treat retreat is really close to Find It. Treat retreat is something that is can be used with fearful dogs, but it can also be used with reactive dogs sometimes. And just from the point of view of the behavior itself, you can teach the dog to go run after. If you have a dog that's reactive, you know, in a home, you teach the dog to go another direction and come back again. But this is really more for fearful dogs than it is for reactive dogs. So turning fear into fun, Find It's really good. Touch is really good. I don't know if the same thing is happening nowadays in classes as used to happen, but people always want to know what touch is useful for. You still get that in classes? Why would I teach my dog to touch? And what is touch useful for? What's it good for? Recall is wonderful for recall.
Yeah, they'll come a long way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's good when you're greeting people because if the dog kind of is interested, you can have them touch it and then come back to you for retreats.
Right.
It's actually really nice for that, so they can go up, or if they're getting used to being around someone, then they can, but they don't have to take a treat. They don't have to be, you know.
So you don't have to see a treat in order to do the behavior, which is kind of an important consideration. What else might it be good for?
It's a fun way to get a dog to go somewhere that you want it to go.
Yeah.
Like kind of like a target training.
Yeah. It actually teaches the dog to follow you, if you want them to follow. So if you've got a dog, you're doing a touch, and then you want the dog to maybe even turn around and go the other direction, you can teach them to go like this. So it teaches the dog to follow your hand, as though it's a target. And from the point of view of, when I was working with Strider, who was reactive when I first got him, he'd see another dog, and I would say touch, and I'd have him, he was on my left, and I'd have him touch my right hand. So it avoided the eye contact. He would go like this and just touch my hand. So it was very effective. It was very subtle, but it worked well enough. And when you think about it, it does what's called a calming signal. So calming signals are ways dogs tell other dogs that they're not a threat. And so if you have a dog that does a hard stare because he's fearful or because he's assertive or whatever, and you teach him to turn his head, then he's going to be giving a cue to another dog that he doesn't even know he's giving. But it's going to be an effective tool to cut down some of the arousal or high energy or even the nervousness that another dog might feel upon seeing your dog staring at him, walking towards him, and all that kind of stuff. So catch is another one I use all the time. And the reason I do is because it is probably the best way to get a dog to watch you without even thinking about it. So, Aspen? I don't think I have any treats on me. She says, that's why I'm not paying attention to you. Because you left your treat bag at home. Oh, somebody brought donut holes again. Yeah, she's already doing spins for those of you who might not be able to see her. So the thing about catch that's really good is Aspen, catch. Good. Catch. Whoops. Okay, so the nice thing about it is that when they think they're gonna play this game, what do you think they do? They stare at you, intensely stare at you. Catch. So if say you're walking along and you see other dogs coming and you want to keep your dog over to the side, and so you get them to do a come for, so they come right up and they do a come for you, and then they want to look at the other dog because you're not a danger. The other dog is a danger. Now if you get them and you're like this, ready, 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 catch. Good girl. Ready, catch. You get way more attention than you do with any other exercise that I know of. Because they have to look straight at you, because if they don't look straight at you, they're not going to catch it. Now, if you want to be mean when you're teaching it, then you can not let them have it if they don't catch it. And I do know a couple trainers who do that, but I just let them go find it. I'm not a mean teacher. So, how to teach your dogs to do this? Now, this may seem really stupid because, of course this is the case, but an amazing number of people just say, oh, my dog can't catch. Just my dog can't. And it's because they haven't been taught. They don't have good eye-mouth coordination because you haven't taught them to do it. A little baby can't catch a ball. They have to learn how to do it. I know you're doing spins. You're just
She's there.
Can you get up here? I don't think you can. That Flocka can get up here. Flocka doesn't have luxating patella. She has luxating patella. So, but this is the way you can teach catch. Aspen, catch. It's just very easy. Catch. Good girl. Catch. And what happens is they start to get that, and then you're like right here, catch. Good girl. So you make it as easy as possible. This is one of the things my clients say a lot, which is I actually take as a huge compliment. Is as I'm getting ready to go, they go, you're saying things that are all just good sense. And I go, yeah, it should feel, these things should feel like they are, that they're reasonable and logical and easy to go through, and they're not. I'm not going to try to, teach your dog to do things that are not natural to them. These are all very natural things. So catch is really good, and then of course spins and jump, go rock. Go rock is obviously one of our favorites. There's Luke on a go rock, on a tree. He's on the branch of a tree. He's on a real rock there, and there he is on another stump. So all of our dogs, everywhere we go, they find things that are high and they go on rocks. And we call it the get out of the way thing. We just want you out of the way. So they get out of the rock, get on the rock. Yeah.
How do you train just briefly?
How do you train what?
Go rock.
Oh, it's just up, just jump up. And the thing is, after a while, they start, you'll do it to something ahead. So you say go rock, and then you point at something, and then they go up on that, and then you reward them. And it's just a really quick mark. Aspen, let's see if you do it this way. Come here. Go rock. No, I can't. Go rock. How about this one? Go rock. No, because that's slippery. But I've got zillions of pictures of them on rocks and bushes not bushes,
Makes
stumps.
good photography too.
Yeah, because they all sit there and it really looks cute and all that kind of stuff. But that's a really nice thing for getting out of the way. Particularly if you walk in country areas. If you're walking in the city, I can't imagine that there would be that many places that they could do it. Go up on the fire hydrant.
Benches.
I don't think, huh?
You can do touch for that too, to put the front paws up on the fire hydrant.
Oh, yes, you could. Yeah, for sure. But tricks are wonderful. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I do a lot of this stuff when I walk groups, but one thing I have happen is other dogs will come over to investigate, especially if we're doing like find it or something, especially if they know that there's treats.
Yes.
So I don't really work with really reactive dogs, but what would you do in that situation?
Well, the thing is that then you have to, it's a really good point, and it's not just a good point for groups of dogs, it's also good for any dog, because as soon as another dog sees that you've got treats, they go, I'm gonna come on over here. So, although I'll do find it's, when there's dogs coming, I might do it before the other dog sees us, or before the other dogs have gotten really, investigatory about the whole thing. And then I often will wait till right after. So if you can wait, almost everything I'm doing these days when I'm working with singleton dogs is geared at waiting until the other dog's passed before the reward comes. And there are two reasons for that. The first reason is that I want to use anticipation, which we talked about last week, to try to get the dog to want to pay attention to me and to go past the other dog. And the second one is to avoid the other dog. The other dog's interest. So that's a really important, both of those are really important, so I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't even remember that thing was going on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sort of?
You can do catch too, so I walk with a group of 3 dogs, and I just say their name, and I'm just like, I say Copper Catch, and he's really good at it. But sometimes you have to, like, when there's no one around, then I work on it.
Oh, of course, you always, everything you're gonna work
Then
on.
they're looking at you, and you're just like, and it's better than a watch, because then it's too hard.
When you say watch, your dog knows there's something else happening.
Yeah.
It's just like if you say leave it, there's something else that's good around. So they immediately get suspect. Like, okay, you just told me to leave it, and although one of my clients this week, the dog is, she has a corgi, the biggest cardigan corgi I've ever seen. He's 45 pounds. He is so big. And I'm like, I said, what happened to him? Does your breeder know? And she says, yeah, they don't know what happened to him. He's like this big dog on these little short stubby legs, and he's only 15 months old, and he's attacking their healer, but in fun, all the time. And the poor healer's having to put up with it. She's 6 years old, and she's just having to put up with it and put up with it and put up with it. But he goes for all the food. He's a big old bully. He's trying to get stuff. And in the first time in, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 months, I'm like, well, you're teaching this dog, leave it. And I don't care that he thinks that I'm angry. I'm angry. He can't have this. He can't have the other dog's food, bowl, toys, or whatever. So we're working on that. Actually, this client is funny because she contacted me because our daughters, 28 years ago, went to preschool together. Being around a county for a long time is it's a weird thing, really is.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So when Mick, even at the very beginning, food won't work because he just goes aroused.
Food won't work.
Food won't work. But he's so snappy, oral fixated anyway. But I keep thinking there's got to be something, like he's obsessed with the frisbee.
Uh-huh.
I can never imagine myself tossing the frisbee 5 feet.
You mean like if he's seeing another dog and you're worried about that?
If we're trying to pass on a dog, usually the food doesn't work if we're close.
Okay.
So for his mouth,
do you work with food a lot?
not enough. Not enough.
Well,
we're actually
I'm not
out.
making a judgment call. I'm just asking you whether or not you work with food when things are not.
Yes.
Okay.
But
And
it's
he
usually
will.
when I don't have food, we won't actually run into somebody.
Yeah. No, I'm not even. I'm just talking about setting the behavior.
Yes.
And how does he do when you're Aspen? Aspen. This is your room here. He gets to go back and forth. So I guess Aspen, come here. So I'm trying to just figure out whether or not how well do you think he knows the behaviors you want him to do?
Very well, like in the yard or if no other dog is around, he's fantastic.
Okay, so he's got he's got foundation, but at what level does he forget it? Is it when another dog's in his face, or is it another dog is like 20 feet away?
20 feet away.
20 feet
He'll
away?
still work, but if we have to actually pass that dog moving forward, because there's nowhere to hide or go off to the side, it's almost impossible.
Okay, and what are the behaviors that you're working with him?
Find it's, and, just redirecting. If we could turn around, I always turn around, but if we can't, I usually just do a running find it past the other dog.
Okay, so you're running, and then you're trying to do a find it like out ahead of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Does he, I'm not sure that I would do a find it with him. I mean, I think the find it is fine because it works at 30 feet, and I would certainly suggest doing it at 30 feet. But since he's not since his stomach shuts down
Yeah.
when he gets really close, you probably need to think of other things that would be better. And the frisbee's not going to work either. The chances are really low that your frisbee or a ball is going to work, because it's like he's being pushed out of an airplane. If somebody's pushing you out of an airplane, do you want a piece of cake?
Yeah.
Would you like a toy? He's just, he's in free fall. He's really upset. So what we have to have is we have to have some default behaviors, or some behaviors that you want him to default to, that are really, really strong and that he can do at any time. And I think you've pegged it. I think what we really want to do is something that has speed involved with it. So one of the things you might do would be, when you're on your walks, do bursts of speed that have nothing to do with anything, just out of nowhere. Just and actually give it a cue, like, Mick, run, and you're going to run. And then as soon as he gets, you go 20 feet or however far you go, then have him do a sit. Sit, watch you, or whatever, and then you just walk on again. So maybe in a walk that's a half an hour, you might do this 5 times. And so it turns into a game, and it has nothing to do with anybody else. So it's a because he can't take a treat, it's impossible for him to take a treat. Let's give him a parachute. Let's give him something that he can actually, like, we're going to go do this. Because right now you're probably using it as a kind of an alternative, a panic alternative.
Right.
And what we want to do is turn it into a trained behavior.
That's perfect.
Anybody else have an idea? Yeah?
What if you set up scenarios where you have a friend with a reliable dog and you stay, at a healthy threshold where he's not feeling so threatened, and you just practice those same drills, and even out on the trail, just to kind of desensitize him and let him experience the success of it without having to deal with the public in that kind of situation.
If you can.
Yeah. And often we are jogging anyway. If I'm out on a run with him, it's almost never an issue.
It's not going to happen, yeah. They have to pay too much attention to what's in front of them. Yeah.
So,
That's why running is so good.
yeah.
But it is also, you also have to have an off switch to the running.
Yeah.
And that, and actually what was working with the golden retriever, and what we found with the golden retriever was yesterday, and his recall was getting better because we were working on it. And, but then he'd start to go into overdrive. You could just feel his heart rate would go up, and he'd start to pant, and then he'd need to do zoomies, because he's a young golden retriever. And they're like, how can I stop him from doing this? Okay, these are the people that don't want to use treats. And so I said, we're just going to stop, and we're going to get him calm, and we're going to do a little massage and get him back where he was, and we're going to feel his heart rate, and when his heart rate drops, then we'll start to work with him. But we had been working for 45 minutes. This is a long time for a dog to work on the same behavior over and over and over again. I mean, the people were kind of getting tired of it too, but they wanted to work until it was perfect.
One day.
Yeah, like that's going to happen.
So, Trish, I have a question about the burst of speed, which I think is awesome. But what do you do when you come around a hedge and there's a dog right there? Like, it's just smack. Like, what do you think is the best? I mean, obviously you turn around, but
Turn around and run.
That's it.
is there some? Would you suggest us cueing the same thing? Run.
Yes, I would say absolutely. We're going to do, well, years ago I took Kung Fu. Kung Fu is like, right, karate kind of thing. And they said the most important part of Kung Fu is run fu. Go! Get out. Take your escape. So because it gives the dog escape. You know, it's choosing an alternative, but you're putting the alternative under cue, which is a really good thing to do. And so I think that would be, when I was walking with Luke one time, I think it was Luke and Aspen actually, two Labrador retrievers came out and attacked us. I may have told you this. One came out, Luke engaged, I dropped his leash, I kept on going, and then he came to me, which was wonderful, good boy that he was, and another Labrador came out and rolled him over. And so these two dogs were attacking him. The poor woman who owned the dog is out. She'd opened her garage door to go get a newspaper, so she was in a dressing gown, and there are her dogs attacking another dog, and so Lukey, bless his heart, I just kept on calling him. Of course, she's barking, like, "You can't get me!" But I kept on moving away from Luke, called him. He came, the dogs came after him, but we kept on going, and then we ran all the way home. Not because I was trying to run away, but because I really wanted him to have a different experience, to be able to look back on, to go, okay, everything is all right, it's okay, it's all right. And he didn't get any worse after that, which is great, considering that it was probably a pretty traumatic event for him. So then the other thing that you can use in behavior modification, like relaxation techniques, just like I was talking about with maybe, petting the dog until you feel the heart rate drop. You can also do Zen downs. And this is a Zen down. This is a doggy Zen down. But it's essentially the same kind of thing, where you're actually putting a dog on the ground, holding the dog on the ground until the heart rate drops. And this was one of our friend's dogs who was doing his own. She called that the roach sleep, because it's totally a roach. But the Zen down is really nice because it not only works on the person a dog, it also works on the person. So you put the dog in a down, you roll them on the down, you hold them there until you feel their heart rate drop. And although it sounds, when I'm saying this, it sounds really easy, getting a dog to do it the first time is very difficult, because guess what? It's a trust exercise. Because when your dog is pinned to the ground and you're holding them to the ground, this is the Marin County alpha roll. This is not, this is really nice. So when he feels that, he's going to feel vulnerable. And you actually kind of want to encourage that to a certain extent. You really want him to learn to trust you, that if you've got the leash, if you've got him. So I think it's an important exercise to do under any circumstances, with any dog, something like it. And of course with a small dog, it's the same thing as holding them in your arms, because they can't get out of your arms. With a large dog, it's a lot harder. Okay. Oh, there's Luke doing a go rock. Looking really magnificent. He's a good looking dog. He's just crazy, Okay, so before we get to the class, there were a couple of people who had some dogs they wanted to talk about. Is that okay? All right. So Marion? All right, so you got to come up here and talk at them.
All right.
Because otherwise they won't be able to hear you. So we're going to do some brainstorming here. We're going to figure out what to do, what's possible with this dog. Not what to do with this dog, what's possible.
Yeah, this is a Malinois, 1.5 year old male, and he was brought to the shelter and surrendered to the shelter at 6 months old, along with a female sibling, by an older man whose children had given him these two dogs, and he couldn't control them. And the female was adopted immediately, and about 3 weeks later, the male, Joe, was adopted. And in his evaluation at the shelter, the only thing they had indicated to the person that was adopting him was that he didn't play well with other dogs. And actually what he did was he would rush at the other dog and go for their neck and sort of push them away. And none of the other dogs would play with him. The only one that would tolerate him was one of the trainer's very neutral pit bulls, who would just lie there and not pay any attention, ignore him. And so after the people had had him for a week, they said, you know, he was very reactive to dogs, on leash and off leash, both. They couldn't take him for a walk, and they didn't know whether they could keep him. He's very agile, he's very intelligent, he's very, very fast. And the couple who adopted him have no children in the house. The man is a retired engineer and the wife still works. The man's the only one who can walk the dog because the dog is very strong. So the trainer went out and worked sort of what we call it day training without the owners for quite a long time, doing counter conditioning and desensitization and doing the bat work. And then now meanwhile, a year has gone by and the dog was felt that it could be part of a reactive dog class. It's like a walking class. It's limited to 5 dogs, and they walk through sort of quiet neighborhoods, and then they also walk before a shopping center opens. They do exercises in the parking lot, parallel walking, figure eights, and so forth. And the thing that I noticed in this is the dog, pretty soon all the dogs know each other that are in the class, and so they're more tolerant of each other. But when this dog, his leash aggression, which still is, you know, I'd say pretty severe, is he gets on his toes, his ears go forward, and he pulls back his lips, shows all his teeth, and he lunges and barks. And so far, none of this has helped, and he's also developed a few other little problems, like he's afraid of overhangs, so they can't walk him under overhang, they can't walk him between 2 buildings if it's, you know, 2 tall apartment buildings with a sidewalk or something in between. He's afraid of that, and he's now getting afraid of their dark hall. And then he also runs in continuous circles around the tree in their backyard. They think he's looking for squirrels. I don't know, I read that these dogs tend to run in circles rather than run a straight line across the field or something. They'll run in circles, so I don't know whether that's
Well, it's an OCD behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's
Yeah,
because
but
if you're running in a circle without a reason to run in a circle,
that would be an actual
Yeah.
obsessive. So he's on a medication which is, I guess, a milk protein casein, and it's supposed to be calming, but it hasn't done much for him that they
What's
can.
it called? What is it?
It's Zylkene.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's just a milk protein. I think it has different names, but it's a milk protein. And anyway, this trainer thinks it's really wonderful, but it works with many dogs. It hasn't with them. The owners are hesitant to do Prozac. I think they didn't sign up for this. The previous dogs they had were laid-back labs, and they really.
Now they have a Malinois.
Now they have a Malinois. So they're, I told you all the different protocols that the trainer has used. The wife, the dog listens more to the wife than the husband, but I noticed when he's walking, even in this class, sometimes, he's doing his cell phone and paying, rather than paying attention to the body language of this dog, which is pretty obvious. I mean, he's
So do you
constantly
assist
looking
in this class?
around. And I'm the volunteer in
Okay.
this class, and I have the neutral dog.
And you have the neutral dog?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then now they're getting discouraged.
Yeah, now they're getting discouraged. They thought, they wanted him to butt sniff my dog, the trainer, and that worked and they spent too long on it. Should have been maybe a second. And so the next thing is he was muzzle punched, my dog in her butt, which he of course corrected him for that.
Mhm.
But so he really can't get, he really can't get more than 10 feet within another dog. Even he could walk parallel with my dog, but no closer than 10 feet.
So she's been using bat and counter conditioning mostly.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and desensitization, I guess, and they're sort of starting to work on these other fears that he has.
Yeah, okay.
I'm wondering what, are the owners working with the dog at all, like with obedience or any kind of training?
Yes, I think, yeah, they are working, I don't know how much they really follow through on their homework.
And then what is his life like, what's a typical day for him at the house? Like how much attention?
Well, he's retired, he's home, and he's home with the dog, and then he takes the dog on several walks where he doesn't think he's going to encounter, other dogs. And the dog also, they're having a lot of trouble with their neighbors because their neighbor has a dog next door, and anytime that dog comes out in the yard or the Malinois hears anything on that side of the fence, he just, barks and.
Oh my goodness. Larry?
It sounds to me like a dog may have a lot of fear issues, and possibly some of the things that we're doing are simply creating more fear issues with the dog. If he's now becoming afraid of overhangs and dark alleys and, something.
Yeah, you might have a point, because if he's actually getting worse rather than better in some areas, like the OCD or the fear-based stuff, then yeah, they may be thinking they're doing good things and be actually doing the wrong thing, doing bad things. Yeah.
Why do they need to walk the dog so much? Because why can't they, sometimes I feel like their fears become like just generalized to so many things, and going on so many walks, I think sometimes is detrimental.
Actually, it can be detrimental, but
It's hard when they have a high drive dog.
Yeah.
What can
you get them a treadmill.
Yeah.
They're really handy.
Absolutely, yeah. Is that an option to not walk the dog so much?
Maybe the person wants
And
it.
he's very friendly with people. I mean, he's very friendly with people.
Right, but the problem is there's
Yeah.
this fear, and then there's a new fear, and then there's the dogs, and then there's another fear. It just starts getting worse and worse, and the cortisol levels are so high all the time.
Well, yeah, it must be high all the time.
Yeah.
And he's afraid in his own house in the dark front hall.
Yeah.
Of course, they could turn on the light,
Well, yeah.
but,
Becomes easy to fix.
Yeah, then he probably will chase shadows.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What do you do with OCD besides medication? I mean,
Well, you
OCD
have
suggests
the spinning and whatnot. You actually have to do a lot of prevention, and the Malinois are prone to OCD behaviors. They are highly intelligent, but they're also highly driven. And you get a lot of these. The Malinois, the Dutch Shepherds, they're not dogs that I would ever want to have, because you don't relax with them well. They don't relax well. So it starts off as an excess of energy that they're trying to burn off, and then it ends up being something that they are patterned about, and they just cannot stop. So you have to reinforce an alternate behavior, but it can be very difficult. You got a spinning dog, that means that they spend a great deal of time on a tether, in order to kind of get them used to the idea that they can't spin all the time. Lukey had some OCD behaviors when we first got him, and what we did with him, because he chased shadows, is we ended up turning lights off all the time so that he didn't have time to practice it. But I agree that at this point, it seems like if they're walking him 3 or 4 times a day, that they're probably making it worse rather than making it better, because of the fact that the dog doesn't have downtime that he can relax. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, since his stress seems to be so high, they're probably feeling like they need to give him exercise to help him and to give him stimulation, and I totally understand that. But I feel like there are other things like nose work or scent work that they could even do in the house, where the sniffing, releases oxytocin.
I think
it's
some
calming.
nose work would be really good, and
Because
if you
I
got a
feel-
good class, then
Yeah.
they understand about things like reactivity.
Because I feel like this dog is a driven dog and it needs a job, and that would be a really productive and calming job, so that it calms the dog down, it keeps its brain busy and stimulated in a not stressful way, and it's very rewarding. So I'm just wondering if that might be an alternate solution to the physical exercise that he might feel the dog needs.
And something that Joel brought up is really good, the obedience. I mean, desensitization and counterconditioning by their nature are not obedience. You're trying actually to change the dog's emotion. However, with this, particularly with a dog that is bred to do obedience, having good, strong, especially things like good down stays and sit stays that last 5 to 7 minutes are really, really important, because how else is he going to learn how to control himself and control his impulses if you don't help him do that? So, you know, the working on emotions has to go right along with working on the operant stuff, the brain stuff that is helpful for that. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it sounds like they want another lab. I mean, maybe the true solution is here that this dog needs to be rehomed to a different
Yeah,
environment.
I actually thought of that, and then I thought, who on earth is going to take a dog into their home who's got reactivity and OCD behaviors? And, you know, he would be dreadfully difficult to rehome, unless you.
That's not their burden. I mean, if they've returned it to the shelter where they got, I mean, it shouldn't.
They're afraid it's gonna be euthanized
Yeah.
if rather.
As soon as you've got a dog, it becomes your responsibility, right?
Right, but I mean, but you've had clients where you're like, this isn't the right dog for you.
Oh yeah. I mean,
And-
when Marion first talked about it with me, we were like, "This is the wrong dog for these people."
Right.
But
But I
it-
mean, but sometimes people have to get out of a situation and they feel terrible about it, but sometimes it's better for both parties.
Yeah.
Mental health wise.
Yeah, but Michelle, you're not thinking that you still have to convince them.
Yeah, I hear you.
They've
Yeah.
had the
Yeah,
dog
they've had
a year
it.
now.
Yeah.
Oh,
they-
they've had it? Oh, that's a
Yeah.
long time. We didn't know that it's been
Yeah,
that long.
yeah.
Okay, I thought it was.
Max?
recent.
I think, first of all, if he's in class and he's on his phone, he's not really paying attention to stuff.
No.
And if he's at home and the dog hears the dog next door, he's gotta be aware of that and prevent the dog from infecting.
So what you're saying is there's no management, that if the guy's on the phone in class and that the dog barks in the house and yard, that somebody's not managing him appropriately,
You wonder
correct?
how bonded they are too, right?
And they actually used a citronella collar, I think, on him for the barking, which apparently helps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can understand you. The problem with barking is that it's very self-reinforcing. So if you have to use a citronella collar, you have to use a citronella collar. And yes, it's not pleasant, but on the other hand, if they stop barking, they start going, okay, I feel better if I'm not barking. So it actually is a way to teach a dog to accept that they don't have to bark all the time.
And the neighbors
I-
didn't.
Yeah,
I do think one thing that can help too is to have the dog work for their meals as well. You can have them do foraging around their house. You can have them do it around the yard. I noticed with my Mochi, if we're doing foraging around the yard, she doesn't pay attention to anything that's going on, and she's a real big alert barker. And if it's raining, we do it around our house, and I have to say, find it, and she will search forever, and it tires them out. I'm not saying all OCD dogs, it cures that, I don't mean that, but sometimes things like that it can give you a break, and it gives the dog a break too. It can bring down their arousal.
so I think if this were my client, I mean, first of all, we would start working on obedience, and would start in the house, but it could go outside. Another thing is that the stuff that Erica talked about is really important. He should probably be walked every other day, certainly not 5 times a day.
Well, I don't know how often a day he's walked on it.
Okay,
5
all
times,
right,
yeah.
but, well,
Yeah.
he should be walked every other day,
day,
yeah. We always think of big muscle exercise as really important, and it is really important, but you also need to have time for the dog to relax after each walk. And he probably should be, I don't know if he is, but they should probably take him in their car to someplace else and not walk him around the neighborhood, so that he, is not cognizant of what dogs are behind what fences and all that kind of stuff. That's really also important. Using a calming cap is a potential, that you can walk a dog on a calming cap. You do have to kind of keep a short leash.
They did try that, and he wouldn't tolerate the cat.
Because they didn't try hard, probably.
Okay.
Because it's like they put it on, it's like most people do with a gentle leader. You put it on, you go, dog doesn't like it, and then you take it back off again. But there are times when it's really important to actually use a gentle leader, just like it's important to use a calming cap. And in the end, you're right. He doesn't belong in this home. He absolutely doesn't belong in this home. He probably belongs on that ranch.
That's what I was thinking, 2,000 eggs.
That ranch. The ranch that we all know about that doesn't exist. That one. Yeah.
Another reason to go take the dog someplace other than the neighborhood for the walk is it gives the neighbors a break too.
It's true, yes. Yeah. Because and especially if the neighbors probably the problem is that we all have a tendency to blame the dog, and so the neighbors probably hate the dog, you know, and it's not the poor dog's fault. But I think you're gonna, in order to work on the OCD behaviors, you're gonna have to really work on getting the dog's base level of energy down. And you're talking about a Malinois. So you're actually working totally against nature. And he sounds pretty unstable. Poor guy, you know. But I'd put him on Prozac in a heartbeat, for sure.
Year and a half
How
old, right?
old?
Year and a half,
Yeah, he's a
year and a half, yeah.
6 months.
Yeah,
I was just gonna ask how old he is.
oh, yeah, he's a year and a half. Okay, so have we got this thing solved? Right,
He's fixed.
yeah,
And I think if he's only to be walked, I think the owner wants to do something. It sounds like the owner likes walking, but maybe the owner could think of activities in the yard like a small agility course.
yeah.
You know, frisbee, another way that they can work on their bonding.
Yeah, just something, even putting a lot of boxes. One of the dogs that I work with is not particularly social. So what she's done is she's built some kind of things. She hides treats under things, under rocks or whatever, and the dog under things. She doesn't care about a yard.
Yeah.
But you know, she can go. The dog goes underneath things to find stuff, and it actually is really helpful for her too. And this particular dog doesn't like to go underneath things, so it actually taught her to go underneath things. So that was a good thing. But yeah, there are no simple answers, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a break.